This evening, James Hird and the Bombers finally part ways. Hird says he's quit to allow the club to move on from the Asada investigation and a disastrous season on the field.
I want the supporters to come to the game and love coming to the game again. I want us to win. I want us to be a great club again. I don't want us to be the centre of attraction when it comes to drugs in sport.
I'm Amanda Shalala and this is Grandstand. Thanks for your company. James Hird's tumultuous reign as Essendon coach has finally come to an end. The Bombers club legend today accepted his fate, deciding to quit after losing the support of the Essendon board. Hird's been under pressure since the Bombers' 2011 supplements program resulted in 34 past and present players being taken to the AFL Anti-Doping Tribunal for taking a banned substance. A poor season on the field sealed Hird's fate, with the Bombers sitting 15th on the ladder with just 5 wins. And our reporter Damien McIver joins us from outside Essendon headquarters for the latest. Damien, just tell us about some of the reasons James Hird did give for quitting.
Well, this has been building for some time, and I don't think anybody was surprised to see James Hird end his tenure as coach. Perhaps surprised that it's come with still 3 weeks to go in the season. Anybody that's watched the team perform this year or followed the scandal that's engulfed the club for the last 3 years have seen the toll that it's taken, particularly on Hird as coach, who for much of that time has been defiant, but particularly in the last few weeks has looked very much like a dead man walking in coaching terms. He told the media today that he first approached the Essendon hierarchy about 4 weeks ago to discuss his position moving forward, and last Friday he told the club he'd be willing to step down if the board thought it would be the right thing to do. Well, he got his answer yesterday and he now ends his tenure as Essendon coach. He was a champion player at the club, one of the most revered figures in the club's history, indeed the game's history, but his time as Essendon coach will be remembered sadly for all the wrong reasons and the role he played in the doping scandal that has engulfed the club and will do so for months to come, with of course the World Anti-Doping Agency appealing against that finding which cleared 34 Essendon players earlier this year. That'll be heard in November, so while the club is desperate to move on and they've made this decision to stand Hird down, the players still have that doping scandal over them.
Well, let's hear from James Hird, who says he stepped down because he wanted to get the focus back on footy.
We want to be a football club again. We don't want to be the centre of media speculation. We don't want to be a place where there's cameras out the front of our club every day. We don't want to be on every TV show every second day. We don't want to be every second article in the paper. We want to be a football club that's talked about for their football. And that if I could, by leaving, provide them, that would enable our football club to go back to a football club, and I think it was in their best interest that I leave.
You mentioned there are only 3 rounds left in the home and away season, so why do you think this announcement came now rather than waiting till the end of the season?
Well, the timing is interesting. The assistant coach, Matthew Egan, will step in as caretaker. Now, a number of other clubs are already in the hunt for coaches for next year, both Adelaide and Carlton. There are a number of highly credentialed assistant coaches that are being courted for those roles. So perhaps they didn't want to miss out on potentially appointing those prospects to coach the club beyond this year. But anybody who's watched Essendon could see the effect that this scandal has taken on the club, and whether or not Hird coached out the year or, as we've seen, stood down today, it seemed really just inevitable.
Damien McIver in Melbourne, we'll leave it there. To other AFL news, and West Coast and Fremantle could both lose key players to suspension at the tribunal this evening. Eagles midfielder Chris Marston is defending accusations he bit the Dockers' Nick Subban during Sunday's spiteful derby. Marston could miss the rest of the season if found guilty. Dockers defender Alex Silvani is also facing a lengthy suspension. He's been referred for an off-the-ball hit which left Eagles forward Jamie Cripps with a fractured jaw. Australian Rugby League captain Cameron Smith has warned players to cut the shoulder charge out of their game or face the consequences. It comes as confusion reigns over the NRL's new interpretations of the controversial tackle.
This is the move that's causing a divide in rugby league. The NRL is trying to completely eradicate shoulder charges from the game, but recent changes to the policy have left players puzzled.
I wouldn't. I don't really know.
No, I can't probably tell you that.
I've got a bit of an idea, but, I think the landscape's changed the last couple of weeks.
6 players were charged over the last round under the new guidelines, which were introduced after Roosters prop Kane Evans escaped punishment for this tackle.
I think the NRL are making a stance on tackles that can be quite dangerous.
In June, Queensland Cup player James Ackerman died as a result of a shoulder charge.
A footballer lost his life as a direct result of a shoulder charge. So, if there's 6 incidents and those 6 charges over the weekend, then players have got to get it through their heads that they can't put that tackle on. Simple as that.
But rugby league legend Andrew John says the debate isn't clear-cut. He's labelled the NRL's efforts to stamp out the technique as an absolute debacle. While he supports the removal of the traditional shoulder charge, he says players should be able to brace to protect themselves.
Do we need a player to lift his hands and expose his face and to break his own jaw on their opposition player for us to go, hang on, something's wrong here?
The changes will be put to the test here at the NRL judiciary tomorrow night, with 3 players, Isaac Luke, Aidan Guerra and George Tafua, all contesting their charges. Jennifer Browning, ABC News.
Grandstand Rugby League expert Matt Elliott is here to reflect on round 23. And Matt, we've heard Cam Smith, Joey Johns there weighing in on the shoulder charge debate. What do you think? Is the crackdown fair or has it gone too far?
Look, the NRL is spot on, just as Joey Johns said and just as Cam Smith said. But I guess what we've got to do is apply some common sense around this. It is called a shoulder charge, which means someone's charging at you. So they certainly need to have a look at that when we've got to take into account force. We've also got to take into account players taking protective action to save themselves. Now, the George Tafua one, which we'll probably see in a while, they were going to collide. There was no way that they weren't going to collide. And by George Tafua actually turning himself, he probably prevented injury, and some head knock. So there just needs to be a little bit of application of common sense. I think at the moment we're in double demerit time, just like the highway patrol, and it's certainly got everyone's attention. So players know they have to adapt their styles.
Now, we're just seeing the George Tafua one there. The Sharks have been touted as a top 4 team, but do you think they were brought back to reality a little bit last night with that loss to the Storm?
Well, they played a really high-quality team that probably played their best football in 6 weeks, I'd say. So the Storm's form was outstanding, particularly defensively. So, look, I can't see the Sharks finishing in the top 4 now. I think that was just about the end of it. There's a little bit of a gap there, and they'd have to pull the Rabbitohs in, who I think have just hit form. So, I wouldn't be too dismayed if I was a Sharks fan. They came up against a side that nailed everything last night.
Well, what pleased you most about the Storm's efforts?
Well, I think there was a whole team effort. That's the big thing. Everyone talks about their key players, Cam Smith and obviously Cooper Cronk. We do often miss the other quality in their team. But what we saw last night was from 1 to 17, every player contributing right across the park. That makes them a very difficult team to beat.
The Bulldogs have strung a couple of wins in a row now, including that one over the Titans on the weekend. But how much of a blow is the absence of Michael Leisha, who's out for the rest of the season with an ankle injury?
I think it saves Des a really difficult decision. Des has been sort of going through, is it Moses Mbai, is it Reynolds, or is it Hodkinson playing in the halves? One of those guys, and I'd guess Reynolds will go to hooker in the absence of Leisha. So I don't think it's such a bad thing. I think they need those 3 guys. They're definitely in their best 13, and it just, there's a tough decision removed for Des now. And
are the Dogs a team capable of shaking things up in the finals from the bottom half of the 8?
Look, they're really reliant on possession. I've got some players just emerging into form. The Morris boys in particular were outstanding. Eastwood on the weekend and Sam Cassiano was mind-blowing. But what happens with them is if they don't get the right amount of possession, they lose a lot of steam. So they're a team that can make a little bit of an impact for sure in the finals, but it's relying on them playing their best football every week. They can't have a down day.
The Roosters beat the Eels as we expected, but are you seeing enough from the Tricolours to earn that premiership favouritism, which they do have?
Yeah, I am. The last 4 weeks they've played in bursts. That in periods of games, if they play like that over 80 minutes, they'll beat any team in the comp, by a fair margin. They've adapted a new style of footy, a lot more flamboyant than we saw from them 2 years ago when they won the competition. It's working for them in stages of the game, not right across the 80 minutes. They've got to work on a little bit of balance, but their defence is right up where it used to be.
And their next opponent is going to be the Broncos. It's going to be a massive showdown, isn't it? And what are you expecting from the Broncos? They snapped those couple of losses to dust the Dragons. Are they going to really stick it to the Roosters?
Look, I've been someone who's underestimated the Broncos all year. I thought their young halves combination would finally get worn down by the grind of the NRL, and they were new together. But this team just keeps showing up and showing up. It's a massive credit to each player and to their coach. So you underestimate this team at your own peril. They've got a lot of versatility. They've got a lot of mobility and speed right across the park. They're not the biggest pack in the world, but I tell you, there's lots of guys there that know how to win games and big games of footy.
Do you think they'll hang on to take out the minor premiership?
I'm not so sure about that. I can still see the Roosters coming and might edge them out in that department, but they're going to surprise team. They're going to continue to surprise people right through the semi-final series, and it wouldn't surprise me to see them in the grand final.
The defending premiers, the Rabbitohs, got the job done over another top 4 team, the Cowboys. How much of a statement was that for the Rabbits to make in the premiership race?
That's the best they've played since the beginning of the season, in my opinion. It's a massive credit to the coaching staff and the players that they've found ways to win while not playing their best footy. They're a very, very tight group of guys, and they play very hard for each other, but they haven't been playing well. They played well on the weekend. Everyone's going to have to stand up and take notice, albeit they've lost their hooker for 3 weeks, perhaps.
Well, Matt Elliott, thank you very much as always for all your insights.
Always fun, Amanda.
Well, let's go to basketball, and the Opals have easily qualified for the Rio Olympics with a comfortable win over New Zealand in the Oceania Championships. Without established stars Lauren Jackson, Penny Taylor and Liz Cambage, the Opals still had too much firepower for the Tall Ferns. Laura Hodges top scored with 22 points in their 17-point victory in Game 2. Tonight, the Boomers will look to secure their Olympic berth in the second leg of their qualification series, also against New Zealand in Wellington. It'll be at least 18 months before Ben Simmons begins his professional basketball career. But in the United States, he's already considered a future superstar. The Melbourne product is preparing for his first year of college in the US and a future on the sport's biggest stage.
The basketball world is moving quickly for Melbourne's Ben Simmons. He's back in Australia on tour with his Louisiana college team, LSU. But he can't avoid the hype swirling around him. He's getting used to hearing he'll be the #1 pick in June's NBA draft.
I mean, it's cool. It's a dream. That's always a goal to play in the NBA. But to be considered a top pick, but you still have to get there and do it. So it's a long way to go.
At 6'10" or 208 centimetres, the 19-year-old has a rare mix of elite playmaking ability and size.
For the last 2.5, 3 years, he's just been a special player, and he's really unique in terms of his ability.
His height and skills mean he's comfortable at point guard or centre.
I don't really have a position. I can play 1 through 5, and I don't try and limit myself.
He's already drawing comparisons to the world's best player.
I guess a lot of the experts would see, a teenager with a body that could grow into a LeBron James is very exciting, and his skill set is incredible.
2 of my favourite players would be LeBron and Magic Johnson. So just watching them, it kind of helped me develop my game a little bit.
Ben Simmons is poised to star in college, the NBA and the Olympic Games, 26 years after his father Dave first came to Australia to play as an import in the NBL. Mark Hydes, ABC News.
Matilda's co-captain Lisa Devanna and midfielder Elise Kelland-Knight have been named in the Women's World Cup All-Star team. The pair was influential during Australia's run to the quarterfinals in Canada. Kelland-Knight was twice named Player of the Match during the tournament, while Devanna scored 2 goals, relishing her leadership role.
Quick exchange, Heyman. Devanna scores for Australia. Lisa Devanna.
That's what I mean about Lisa Devanna. In the big game, she puts them away on her left foot.
5 players from the victorious US team were named, including the player of the tournament, Carly Lloyd. Mick Fanning's world title hopes have been dented after being eliminated in the third round of the World Surf League event in Tahiti. Fanning had a chance to go to the top of the championship standings after the leader, Adriano de Souza, was defeated earlier in the third round. But with decent waves hard to come by, Fanning couldn't capitalise. Eventually, he was convincingly beaten by Spanish wildcard Artiz Aranburu.
There wasn't too many ways with scoring potential. Anyway, I knew I having Mick in my head. I knew that any mistake could cost me the heat.
Reigning world champion Brazilian Gabriel Medina had the highest score before organisers called off the rest of the day's heats, citing poor conditions. And that's all from Grandstand for now. You can always catch up on the program on iView and Grandstand Online.